What's up everybody, welcome back. Today we are finally talking about the Sony A1 and why I think it's pretty much the best camera you can buy on the market today, whether it's for video or photo or anything, even taking into account the price. When the Sony A1 came out, I was a little bit skeptical of all the claims because it just seemed like it would be an absolute monster, and we've seen claims before from other cameras and they just didn't quite hold up. And so to say I was skeptical was definitely a true statement. But today we're talking about the Sony A1 and why I think it is just an amazing camera, even taking into account the price. You guys know that while I do like to cover technical stuff and things that really matter, my reviews really come from a real world situation, so I didn't want to make this review until I'd shot a couple of weddings with it and just really put it through its paces in a real world situation, because I find that's when problems with cameras come out, particularly with weddings. I feel like shooting one wedding is equivalent to using a camera for a month in any normal everyday situation, and it definitely passed the test. So let's get into the review. Now I really don't want this video to drag on for longer than it has to, so I've made some points we're going to go over. I'm going to show you guys a bunch of photos. I've shot 2 weddings with this camera, I've done a few vlogs with it, I've taken a bunch of videos, a bunch of photos, and I will upload to a Dropbox link, as always, some raw files and some video files this time, so you can play with them for yourself. Now all footage and photos you're going to see in this video are all from the Sony A1, apart from this talking head video and any shots of the A1 itself, which will be filmed with the A7C, which I have a review coming on soon, by the way. Now one more thing before jumping into this review, I want to mention and give a shout out to Gerald Undone for his amazing videos when talking about video specs and details and all that kind of stuff. Gerald Undone does the most fantastic videos, and he's done a really amazing one with the Sony A1. So if you want to know any more really specific details about the video quality or performance or anything like that, I'll link his video in the description below, not that he needs it anyway. So first let's just talk about build quality really quick, because there's not really a lot to talk about. It basically feels the same to hold as the A9II or the A7R4, but it has a more similar layout to the A7S III, just without the flip out screen. I do personally prefer this kind of screen that just tilts out instead of the flippy one, but that's an individual preference. One thing to note on the tilt screen is it does feel a little bit better, which is a random thing to notice. It just feels a little bit more fluid and a little bit stronger and smoother to use. So not a big one, but something to note. All the buttons are really nice. I do really like having that dial on the top there. I'm really enjoying that with my A9II, just being able to switch to manual focus really quickly without having to change it on the lens. And if I'm using the 55mm, for example, which you guys know is a lens I use a lot, it doesn't have any switches on the body, so you have to kind of go into the function menu if that dial isn't on the top. So moving on, the menu system, it's a tricky one because I'm so used to the original Sony menu system, like what's in the A9II and has been in all the other cameras for a very long time now. I'm so used to it that I just know where everything is. So going to this new Sony menu system was a little bit tricky for me, but after using it, I've had this for almost 2 weeks now, and after using it for even just that amount of time, I can definitely see how this is a much improved menu system. Just because I was used to the old menu system in the Sonys doesn't mean it was right, and this one is definitely an improvement. So I think if you're coming from Canon or Nikon or whatever, switching to Sony, these new menu systems are going to help you out a lot more. Now the focus system is mind-blowing. It's just as good as the A9II, if not a little bit better in some situations, but yeah, it's a really fantastic focus system, and that's talking about photo or video. iFocus works great in video, and it seems to work in all modes as far as I can tell. The only one I haven't tried is 8K, because I just don't really care about 8K, and like I said, Gerald Undone has already done a really good test on that, so you can go check that out if you want to see it. But yeah, the 8K doesn't overheat, again, as per his video, and I didn't have any overheating issues filming 4K, which is pretty much all I've done with this camera. It is getting to the state now where even for wedding videos, I'm feeling like 4K is becoming a standard with all these new cameras, and I'm starting to feel now, you know, in the last year, that 1080p is not quite enough for wedding videos anymore. Active image stabilization is amazing. I'll throw up a couple of clips of me walking along and not making any effort to stabilize it. You know, I'm just holding the camera by the lens like this. Active stabilization is great, and even without active stabilization, it's definitely improvement over the other cameras, like even the A7R4. I do find the normal image stabilization in the A1 is a little bit better. One of the first things I noticed about this camera was the viewfinder. It's just amazing, honestly. It's so big, so fluid, really sharp, really bright, and it's just easy to see through. Even when I am wearing my glasses, it's not an issue to shoot through this viewfinder. And the rear screen is fine. You know, I think it's up to standard of most cameras nowadays. Definitely a lot better than the previous generation of Sony cameras. Another thing I've noticed is the write speed of this camera. So I'm just using the Sony Tough cards, the UHS-2 300 megabyte write cards, or 299 or whatever. The fastest SD cards you can get. And even, you know, my A9II has 2 UHS-2 slots, same as this, although this one can take the CF Express cards, which I don't own. Even with the same cards in this camera, even with the bigger file sizes, it seems to write faster, which I'm not sure, maybe that's just down to the processing power, but, you know, it writes a little bit faster than my A9 Mark II does with the same memory cards. So something also to note there. Makes it a little bit easier when you're doing hybrid shooting, which I have done with this camera at a wedding, a real wedding. We were shooting photo and video, and it clears the buffer much faster, so you can hit that record button a little bit sooner. The next thing I noticed about this camera was that shutter sound. I've talked about it in a previous video, but it's just so quiet. I'll put that clip in now so you can hear that for yourself. This is what the A9 Mark II sounds like. And this is what the A1 sounds like. That's crazy. So that's the difference between the A9 Mark II and the A1 shutter sound. It's a big difference, and it basically removes the need for silent shooting. Although there's no reason not to use silent shooting with this camera, because you don't get any banding. I've tried it. It's the same as shooting mechanical, and you don't have to worry about, you know, fast moving objects or anything. You can just use silent shooting with this camera in all situations, which is something you can only do with this and the A9 series of cameras. Moving on to image quality, it's amazing, honestly. 50 megapixels is really impressive. I definitely felt like when I was shooting on the A7R4, 62 megapixels was not too much, because I was using that RAWsy software to compress the files afterwards, so it was a little bit more manageable for me as a wedding photographer shooting a lot of images. But 50 megapixels is a really good balance between, you know, outstanding resolution. The file sizes aren't too big because we now have lossless compressed RAW in camera, which is great. And the files are just amazing. You know, dynamic range is fantastic. The color tone out of this camera is basically perfect now. I haven't had any issues with skin tone, not that I really do with my A9 Mark IIs. But especially for video, I'm finding the color out of this camera, straight out of camera, is just fantastic. And I am using, for the most part, S-Cinetone, which I'm so happy they put into this camera, and makes me angry at the same time because I can't really afford to buy one, and I really want one, but it's just not on the budget at this point in time. Lastly, I wanted to touch on a few points about, you know, who this camera is for, who should be buying it, and how it is compared to the A9 Mark II and the A7R4 and even the A7S III, because I do feel like this A1 body is basically all of those cameras in one, and kind of justifies the price in that regards, because all of the claims that Sony have made have really come to life in this camera, and I'm really impressed with it. So as a wedding photographer and a hybrid shooter predominantly, I would say this is basically a perfect camera. I don't think you can get anything better. I don't think anything else on the market comes close to this, but it also is much more expensive than all of those other cameras. Just the fact that they've combined all of these cameras, the high resolution from the R series cameras, the low light is not quite as good as the S3, but it's still really fantastic. Honestly, this A1, I feel like there's nothing I couldn't do with it. And again, I'm really gutted that I can't afford it at the moment. So thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate you getting to this point in the video. And because you've gotten this far, I'm going to just drop my other channel with you guys that I started a few weeks ago now, but haven't wanted to bring it up. Just I don't know, it's not gotten very far. So I think I'm at about 83 subscribers right now. And don't worry, as you can see, with the last week or two, I've been making a ton of videos on this channel, and that's going to remain how it is on this channel. So go check out my other channel. It's really just documenting my personal life and documenting my around New Zealand trip on my motorbike, and just any other fun stuff that I like to do is going to be on that channel. So it's more of a just kind of casual, here's me, let's go have some fun kind of video channel. Anyway, I'm rambling now, so thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. I still have yet to talk about the FX3, and I want to do a full review on the Sony A7C, which I'm really loving. Honestly, I don't know how I did without this camera. I haven't even used my Atomos Ninja V since I've had this camera. I know that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but it will make sense when we do the video. So I'll see you in that one in a few days.